Please note that this video has spoilers for the subject. Put off by how long this video is, don't worry, I try to jam-pack my videos with as much content and as much detail as I possibly can. Anything I feel I can comment on and that I feel you might be interested in, I pretty much put in the video. I try not to repeat myself and talk fairly fast. I either have or will cover other parts of this franchise, and this video either is or will be linked below. I'm not going to restate here what I did or will say in the other video. These videos get long enough as it is. I've reviewed other parts of this franchise. The links are in the description box. I got this either as a present or I got it on discount, so I did not pay very much money for this and am thus not bitter on account of that. And welcome, Captain America, the first Avenger. Thoughts. And I do have more of a beard than usual. This is not a tribute to Steve Rogers' look in Infinity War. It's simply my wrists are still got the tennis elbow. So yeah, trying to do without the things that I can that use my wrists, and currently that includes shaving. Now, starting with notes taken while rewatching. Like with the last of these, this section is typed entirely with voice typing. And it's, the voice typing does not like Schmidt, the German version of Smith. So if I accidentally call, Red Skull Smith, that's why. I think it's a good idea to start the movie by telling us, yes, Captain America will end up frozen, found, and thawed up in this movie. I'm not saying there aren't other compelling stories to tell with him being in the 40s, but he should be thawed up before the Avengers, which everybody knew was coming at this point. I think it would have been very annoying if, let's say, half of the Avengers passes before Steve is found and thawed up. I mean, that was kind of one of the issues with Justice League. If Superman had been there from the start, that really wouldn't have been a problem, except, of course, how OP they make him. And with the prologue out of the way, we get the first scene, and takes place in Norway, a comic book movie, especially when it's the first in the series, the first time you see these characters, the first time you see the titular character. It's a good idea for the first scene to be a strong introduction to either the good guy or the bad guy. Darkman also opens with a really strong introduction to the bad guy. Imagine watching Darkman, and let's just say they removed that first scene, because technically, it's not really plot related. It's sort of plot related, but it's not necessary to the plot as such. Imagine removing it, and then, suddenly the first time you see Durant, it's not as strong of a scene as it is, with that scene. The moment you see Durant again, you're like, oh no, this guy, oh, Peyton's in trouble. Now, and after seeing several strong men unable to open the coffin, Schmidt does it with ease. Nice little, first little indication that he's had the serum. Literally, the first thing Steve says is that lots of soldiers dying on his side does not make him think twice about enlisting. And as he's saying that, we realize how much smaller he is than the other men. And those two things put together really, it's such a great introduction to Steve. And again, that could easily have been the first scene. So yeah, and we're just told that Schmidt found the Tesseract. I'm gonna just be calling it that in this, even though they call it the Cube, because we know it's the Tesseract. And the movie theater, the voiceover says, "Face any threat, no matter the size." And just then Steve realizes the bully is much bigger than him. I can do this all day. I really love the callback to that in Civil War. And Bucky hadn't told Steve that it was a double date because Steve wouldn't have showed up. It's one of those things. Bucky is the friend that does what he knows he should do for his friend, even if the friend doesn't agree. Really, I mean, it's not as though Steve doesn't want, he says later, been waiting for the right partner. It's not that he, and he says, recently, in at least the last few years, it didn't seem to matter if he was gonna get with a girl, but he's not, I mean, he's not like dedicated to being single, so it's not as though, yeah. And Howard is seen with, attractive women on the stage, similar to Tony at the start of Iron Man 2. And Bucky does let Steve enlist, even though he doesn't think it's a good idea, because he knows it's what Steve really wants. I mean, as he's walking off, it's not as though he had to walk off. It's not as though he's more dedicated to the woman he's on a date with than Steve. He tells him, don't do anything stupid, but he realizes that, yeah, Steve might go ahead, and yeah, I really appreciate their relationship in this. I think that it sets it up very nicely for, the whole, and we do actually feel the loss when Bucky is, when he falls out of the train and seems to be dead. And Steve brought books to the barracks where we see several of the other soldiers pretend fight each other. These guys can't wait to go kill Nazis. They can't wait to prove how strong and capable they are, so they'll get the serum. And Steve pulls a Milan to get the flag. And Steve jumps on the grenade without hesitation. Again, really strong character moment. I realized that Joss Whedon helped do some rewrites on this, and it was especially about finding character voices. I don't know exactly which of these he did right, but certainly sorry about that. Certainly, I realize that makes the camera bob, and it's really annoying, but can't be helped. Yeah, certainly, the various characters' voices are very much there. Good becomes great, bad becomes worse. Like in The Mask, which is said to be Loki's mask. Honestly, I would absolutely love that. I don't know who has the rights to The Mask, but it started out as a comic book property, so I'm pretty sure it's not, at least not originally Marvel who did that, but yeah. If there were, like, they got Howard the Duck in there, The Mask isn't that much more ridiculous to. And Thorin Oakenshield steals the serum, and no one follows the serum. Yeah, I'm just gonna go with Serum Thief. other than Carter and Steve, and no one who puts up a fight accomplishes anything. The only person shooting at them who hits anything is Carter. And actually, you know, when Carter says, "I had him," you know, really it is that Carter was willing to die. You know, she had more bullets left in the gun, and, excuse me, she was getting very close to hitting him with each, with each bullet as she shoots at him as he drives at her. And yeah, if Steve hadn't tackled her, she would have managed to kill the serum thief, but she would have ended up dead. And yeah, Steve took one look at that situation and says, "I'm not going to let her die." And yeah, I appreciate that she does. She's so tough that she's, you know, she's more annoyed that she didn't get to stop the serum thief than that he saved her life, you know. And then he also, you know, he runs and he accidentally, you know, he turns a little too slowly, so he accidentally crashes through the window of this, like, bridal shop, and he's also like, "I'm sorry." You know, just, yeah, really, really love the MCU characterization of Steve in every single one of the MCU movies. Now, let's see. And immediately after he gets the serum, we are shown Steve's super speed, super agility, and once he catches up to the serum thief, his strength. And Steve would rather take a bullet than let serum thief kill the kid. And Steve manages to tear off the roof of the submarine underwater after he punches through the window underwater. That really is, again, such a great indication of how freaking strong he is. The scene that ends with Schmidt shooting the Nazi officers is great. You know, I'm not really going to get into specific detail. I'd really just, if I went into all the stuff I loved in the scene, I'd literally just be describing everything in the scene. And, you know, the idea with these thoughts videos is, you know, for people to watch them when the movie is, you know, when they remember the movie really well, so that would be kind of annoying to hear, to listen to. The montage is really great, and really great contrast between the montage and Captain America, the montage, and then Captain America in front of actual soldiers. You know, as he says, usually his crowds are 12, and yeah, it is, you know, it was important, but the idea, the selling bombs was important to the war effort, but yeah, actual soldiers, you know, seeing that kind of performance, yeah, it's like there's kind of more serious matters, you know. It's like, what are you doing, you know, in tights while we're out here risking our lives, you know. And as Peggy says, you know, these are the 107th, 105th, something like that, you know. So yeah, these guys just, you know, they recently got back from a battle, they lost a lot of men, and yeah, it really makes sense that they are, let's see, yeah, there we go. And Howard to Peggy is like, "So, wanna get some fondue?" And Steve is like, "Is this guy for real?" You know, and Peggy kind of has to, you know, puts up a little bit of a defense for Howard with, yeah. I love how they filmed Steve in the truck. You know, first he jumps in, and then, you know, at first he's just, oh, thank goodness that worked, because the timing was important there. And then he looks and he sees these two Hydra guys, and through their helmets. It's a lot like you get good reaction from the two guards outside of, crap, I forget her name, but the Eva Green's character in the second 300 movie. Yeah, the two immortals, I think they're called. Great reaction despite their faces being completely covered. These two Hydra, they're like, what? Who? Here? Just and we don't see the fight, but Steve wins, of course. And we just see them being thrown out the back of the truck. Just really, really great. It's one of those things where we don't need to see every single fight, and the movie can make a little bit of a joke out of a short action scene, because it is, I find it works well in these movies when the directors, when the filmmakers decided, okay, let's acknowledge how ridiculously overpowered this character, how in this case not overpowered, but how powerful they are, and it's almost funny how easily they just shrug these guys off. And Steve takes one of the, I think it's an ammo cartridge for the Sazerac, so that they can research that in addition to saving the men. Again, it's not just blindly going in and punching people. He realizes there's more to winning the war than, punching out Hitler. I like the camaraderie between the soldiers, as they're escaping the camp. Some people have said, oh, Steve could easily jump over, the catwalk scene, and Zola, like, pulls the catwalk back. Steve could easily jump over to Schmidt. Yes, but Schmidt is standing at the edge. If Steve jumps over, all Schmidt has to do is punch him hard enough. He'll fall down into all the fires and explosions below. And as for why Schmidt doesn't jump over to Captain America, the place is, blowing up underneath them, and he is already in the process of leaving, and that's also great, Steve retorts to Schmidt, then why are you running? Let's see. What about me? Where will I sit? Schmidt likes to put his feet up. And Steve jumping over the gap, and us not seeing him land until the next scene. That's a lot like the end of one serial and then the beginning of the next one, keeps you coming back. I have faith. Sometimes all you have is to believe. And now that Steve has completed his mission, he is completely willing to accept the consequences of going against orders. And Bucky could so easily be jealous, like angry that he's no longer the bigger one, but he supports Steve without reserve. I really appreciate that. Too many of these movies have like glorify the aggressive and big strong man who just pushes everyone else out of his way. I'm not saying, I quite like Wolverine, for example, although he also does sometimes show he really, it's not all about him, but yeah, I really appreciate that, Captain America really easily could be in these movies, as he is in some of the comics, just that angry guy who pushes other people out of the way, and yeah. And I like the Bucky's line, that little guy who was too dumb to run away from a fight, I'm following him, not Captain America. Don't take it so hard. Maybe she's got a friend. Great little, yeah. Now, and that, the Bucky is very used to when he flirts with an attractive young woman, you know, she flirts back. And like he says, it's like I'm invisible, you know. And to be fair, and I'm not sure Bucky completely realizes that in that particular scene, it's not as though it's just because Steve is big and muscly now. It is the relationship between him and Peggy. You know, they didn't meet 5 minutes ago the way it is with Bucky. And, you know, Steve saved 400 men. He's in front of a woman who's clearly impressed, and yet he doesn't try to show off about it. You know, it's not just that he's still shy around women, although there is that in the scene. You know, I'm not sure all of them were married, you know, but he didn't do it for credit. He did it because it was the right thing to do, which is MCU Steve Rogers in a nutshell. And of course, part of it was also that he figured there was some chance that Bucky was still alive in there, you know. In the action montage, one of the soldiers places an explosive under a tank, and it explodes moments. You know, here he literally sticks it under the tank. You know, it explodes. The whole tank explodes moments later. That's a lot like in one of the Terminator 1 flashbacks. I approve. I forget what it is in Civil War, but that thing where Steve uses the shield to crack open a lock of some sort happens in all 3 movies. I'm pretty sure it happens in Civil War as well. Here it's a tank. In the second movie, I think it's the secret compound. And in the third, maybe it's that facility they enter near the end, keeping it vague for people who are watching this but haven't watched Civil War. And briefly, Steve and Bucky really, you know, Bucky follows Steve's lead. You know, Steve throws him the pistol, knocks that heavy crate at the soldier, forcing the soldier to step to the side, and Bucky shoots. And he briefly picks up Steve's shield for the first time of a number of times. And it's, you know, it's a reference to people who know what Bucky's character, you know, what's in store for Bucky's character down the line. The briefing does a good job of explaining why it is necessary to stop the plane, and, you know, it turns out that the only way to do that for sure is to crash it. You know, it's very important that you know, that we accept that he's frozen, you know, because it's a major part of the Captain America, you know, yeah. How else do you have him alive in the modern age and not, you know, ancient like Peggy is in the second movie? I realize I didn't say what the reason I'm sitting down is also still have a few issues with my feet as well. Yeah, now it's my feet, not my knees so much. The body, the human body, so many different things can go wrong with it all at once. I'm not complaining. There are people who have it far worse than I am. I'm joking, not complaining. Steve on his motorcycle fighting Hydra on their motorcycles is a lot like Return of the Jedi. You know, in that case, it's Star Wars characters fighting, I suppose I shouldn't say, you know, for the 2 people who haven't watched that movie. If you haven't watched the original Star Wars trilogy, you really haven't. You've got homework. And there is speeder bikes. I think that's what they call them. I forget. You know, hover bike. I think it's speeder bikes. They call them. And Schmidt says he deserved the serum, and Steve responds he himself is not special. Again, this strong contrast between the characters. You know, it's not that Steve is the good guy because he punches bad guys, and, you know, Schmidt is the bad guy because he shoots people, including good guys. No, it's you know, if Schmidt wasn't, you know, it's not as though every German is evil. Erskine isn't. Yeah, it is this thing of, you know, if Schmidt had been American and had started to, you know, Yeah, it's not the fact that he's German. He is attacking Berlin too, after all. Now, let's see. Great action scenes, and the plane's propellers scratch the limo. Schmidt is going to be so mad when he finds out. You know, with Steve being shot at by anti-aircraft as he flies back to Schmidt's ship, all three Captain America movies have a good guy character shot at as he flies in the air. I have seen the future, there are no flags. Oh, like that John Lennon song? Imagine, I think it's called. Given that Red Skull doesn't die but is teleported somewhere, I would like to see him return to the MCU, you know. Apparently they might have to recast him because Weaving wasn't like a huge fan of the part in the movie. I think it said somewhere that he was like indifferent towards it, which is too bad because he really is. He plays the role so well, but I would really like to see him. I mean, they could do like a thing where, oh, you know, you look different. Well, the teleportation altered my appearance or something. And the ending, I mean, before the epilogue, nicely sets up the tragedy of Captain America. Excuse me, you know, he thaws back up. He's still alive. He is able to serve his country again and quite willing to. But he has to live on without the people he knew and loved, especially Peggy, although again, in the second movie we do briefly see her. But it's a very different situation than, yeah. And Howard finds the cube and keeps looking for Steve, and he found the cube due to the energy signature, which, you know, without that line, it's like, how the heck did they find the cube in the, you know, all this sea that they have to go through to, that it could be in, you know, anywhere along the way. Yeah, it's not like Steve, you know, had some kind of like, you know, he didn't like send them a message about the exact coordinates he was at when it fell. Yeah, I'm sorry, it's just the coordinates. It reminds me of that thing, you know, on collegehumor.com. There's this collection of like old people trying to use technology, you know, stills of them having written, and there's like someone writing their granddaughter or grandson, help me, I'm at longitude 00, you know, yeah. And it's, yeah, I don't know what the story is there, but it's a little funny to read. And, you know, waking up in the room, Steve realizes that, you know, he can recognize the game. So, yeah, clearly something is off here. And, you know, in comes a few guys in black, you know, about to, you know, do they actually think they can subdue him? Or are they just like, I don't know, I guess it's possible they have some kind of taser or something, you know, but yeah, he sees guys in black and figures Hydra. You know, he doesn't wait for them to explain that they're not Hydra. And, you know, it's not, you know, people, the audience, having watched the other movies in the MCU, we're like, those guys, you know, we accept once we see Fury, oh, those guys were definitely S.H.I.E.L.D. You know, we've seen, yeah, the guys in S.H.I.E.L.D. do, yeah, dress in black. Now, you know, the post-credit scene, this trailer for the Avengers, I guess you could argue it's too much of a teaser trailer. You know, from start to finish, it is about 40 seconds. 40 seconds. I forget if that's, is that without the, or with the lead-in, the scene that is an actual scene in the Avengers, with him, you know, knocking down the, you know, what's it called, the punching bags, you know. But yeah, I mean, I do think you know, when you think about these post-credit scenes, none of them are very long. None of them are like big action scenes or something. You know, some of them are incredibly memorable and get the audience really excited, but none of them are like a big action scene or something, you know. So this one just happens to also have a teaser trailer, you know, so it's not as though, but yeah, you know, they might not have wanted to stick a 2.5 minute trailer at the end of the movie. You know, you don't usually show full trailers, and then yeah, but it's also possible they didn't have more finished yet, although, I mean, when you really look at it, there are clips from a lot of different scenes over across the movie, so I'm not sure it's that. Although it is possible that effects hadn't been completed for some of these yet, so they were like, okay, we can complete the effects, but only for like 2 seconds of this scene. We do not have time to complete the effects for you know, they hadn't completed the effects for the whole movie, and they didn't want to show unfinished effects, which I also do. That is seriously something that needs, you know, that sucks in trailers. I'm not sure when the last time I saw, but I think they had one for one of the new Jurassic Park movies. I'm not a big Jurassic Park fan, so I didn't watch the newer ones. The new one, is it only one so far? And they're doing the next one, I don't know. You know, maybe they didn't want to give too much away in, you know, I forget the exact dates, but between the premiere of Captain America 1 and the Avengers 1, I mean, they came out in 2 different years, you know, they came out 2011 and 2012. You know, if it was like a year, I don't know, they wouldn't have that much completed footage. Anyway, they might not have wanted to give too much away, you know. I forget when the trailers came out for the second, but, you know, and here for the third, you know, Infinity War, trailers, you know, for a while it was like just the one, and just, you know, but now they've put out, you know, a lot of TV spots. I cannot wait to watch the movie. It's literally, I'm gonna watch it in just under 2 weeks, and it's still just so difficult to wait. It looks amazing. Anyway, the teaser trailer still got me and my friends psyched when we first saw it, and it still really psychs me. You know, in exactly 1 week, I'm going to be watching and then doing one of these thoughts videos on the Avengers again. And I mean, I've watched it tons of times, but it's such an amazing movie. Now, the movie is 1 hour and 49 minutes, not counting the end credits, and 59 if you do count them. Whoopsie daisy, that was a tiny bit too much to scroll. There we go. Notes taken before rewatching. To further go into, I did bring this up in the other videos. I like that Howard Stark is very much his son's father. You know, his tech doesn't always work. He gets himself thrown through the air testing tech. He's a womanizer. You know, it is kind of like, you love Tony Stark, so let's see how big a deal we can make his father in this and how similar we can make him to Tony, despite him being hugely different in Iron Man 2. You know, I mean, when you watch, you know, again, I rewatched Iron Man 2 and now I just saw this one. The characterization is so different, but yeah, you know, this is also a very different film, and this does kind of bring in this, you know, this is sort of, you know, Nostalgia Chick points out in, I think it's the Loose Cannon on Captain America, she points out this movie presents an ideal version of, you know, the American effort in World War II. You know, so the Japanese guy is not in an internment camp, he is one of the troops, and it even points out, you know, I'm from Fresno, Ace, you know, and you know, you've got a British woman right there serving, you know, not yeah, you know, with the SSR, and yeah, you know, this is not the way that. So yeah, this is that version of Howard Stark, where the when you see it through Iron Man's eyes, through his lens, it's a very different, yeah. And you know, in Civil War, it's also very different. You know, that Howard Stark is a lot more like the Iron Man 2 Howard Stark. And that in spite of the fact that it clearly acknowledges that he was present for this, as is evidenced by his reaction to seeing a certain character, who he knows by name. Now, this movie has an odd pace. Really, the first half or so, you know, the origin story itself, getting Steve Rogers to wield the shield as Captain America, is paced well. But the second half of the film, it rushes, you know, you've got action scenes that are done as montage, which does feel like a serial, and that is, you know, very much what it. I'm not 100% certain if they did serials with Captain America. I'm almost certain they did with Batman. But I'm not sure if, yeah, you know, that is how, if they did in the 1940s do like either movies or serials about Captain America, it would probably have been serials, you know. But yeah, honestly, it wouldn't bother me so much if clips of the montages weren't used in the trailers. You know, there it looked like they would be actual action scenes. Just put my phone on silent. The big problem the movie has is that they didn't want to make more than one Captain America movie set in the 40s. They wanted this movie to end with him frozen, then thawed up. You know, after you jump ahead 70 years. They certainly weren't going to make more than one before the Avengers came out in 2012, not with this one coming out in 2011. You know, so they had to get through everything. You know, I mean, one thing, for example, is I mean, I like them fine, but I think they're called the Howling Commandos. You know, they didn't really need to be in this movie, and doing the action scenes and montages allows them to get, you know, little standout action moments, which really they wouldn't particularly have had time for if not. And yeah, you could ultimately remove them, but they wanted the Howling Commandos in the MCU, and, you know, excuse me, thus far there hasn't been an entire movie set in the 60s, so it was going to be the 1940s Howling Commandos. And as such, this was, you know, I mean, as far as I understand, they've been in some of the TV and like, you know, such. For example, I think Agent Carter, the show, I think some of the Howling Commandos were in at least one episode. You know, I only watched the movies. You know, yeah, you can fit them in there as well, but it is this kind of thing, yeah. Now, yeah, so they had to get through everything. I don't know if they would have had more luck if they also rushed or maybe cut down the origin half. And I do think that the first half, maybe the last third or so of this, are quite good. And it's noteworthy how much character, how much personality they fit in. And yeah, again, some of this was apparently due to Joss Whedon and his rewrites. You know, but let's see. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, before I continue my prepared remarks, personally, overall, I do love the entire movie, but I would say that, yeah, the once the first half is over, and then before the last third or so, it does. I don't know. I think it's certainly there. It's not quite what a lot of people definitely wanted out of a Captain America movie. You know, if they had, yeah, like if they had done the whole movie just more, you know, if none of the movie really resembled the pacing of a serial all that much, and then they had done serials, like, you know, put them on DVD or release them on the internet or something, put them on TV, you know, maybe that would have worked better. But yeah, it is. I mean, I have to admit, I'm not sure that it would necessarily have been a huge. Hypothetically, let's say instead of, like, I don't know, half a dozen, I forget the exact number, Hydra bases that they had to raid, maybe there was just the one, and then you know, have a longer scene than the actual climax, or yeah, or two. Let's say there was two, and then instead of the montage of action stuff that show that is, you know, them raiding all of these camps, have two action scenes. You know, one of them the climax as it is now, and before that, yeah, have another action scene in that takes up the space of the movie that is montage. You know, of the camps being raided. I think that might have helped, but then again, I also realize, I mean, seriously, they have that few camps. You know, if that was it, then we'd only see 3 camps over the course of the film. You know, the one that Cap rescues Bucky from, and then yeah, you know, I appreciate that, but it is still, yeah. Now, yes, back to, you know, fitting in a lot of character moments and Joss Whedon and rewrites. I greatly appreciate that the movie doesn't equate being German with being evil, with being on Hitler's, or in this movie's case, Red Skull's side. Erskine says, you know, yeah, I live in, you know, I forget, I'm pretty sure it's somewhere in New York. I forget the exact address. And before that, Berlin, or Germany. Is that a problem? And the answer from Steve, without hesitation, is no. And, you know, one of the commandos speaks German. He learned it at college. You know, in real life, a lot of people have been locked up for speaking the language of the enemy, especially if they weren't trained to spy by their own country. And Steve never hesitates to try to help out in any way he can. And, you know, do you want to kill Nazis? I don't want to kill anyone. I don't like bullies. I don't care where they're from. And, you know, when he sits in the theater watching movies glorifying him, he clearly isn't letting it go to his head. On the contrary, you know, he's like, I'm just me. I'm glad they appreciate it. But, you know, again, so many movies would have had, like, you know, he'd be sitting there and full of himself, like, yeah, that's me. I'm Captain America who wants to shake my hand, you know. I do find it frustrating that there is the romantic misunderstanding, and then Steve basically accuses Peggy of having sex with Stark, and it might be the only time that I'd really say he's out of character in this. I get that he's supposed to like experience with girls, not know how to talk to women, you know, and it is the kind of thing to be in the kind of film this, you know, films from the 40s had scenes like that, you know. And then she fires at the shield, which would kill Steve if it didn't stop the bullets, making a woman look irrational. You know, yeah. It's some of the only stuff I don't like about this movie. And the movie is not so much an action movie, which the other Phase 1 movies are, although they clearly have tonal differences. This is more of an adventure film, which fits the setting and the image of the original Captain America. You know, he punches out Hitler. And, you know, he goes into a Hydra camp by himself, you know. Yes, he sneaks, but, you know, still, it's, yeah. Now, in the old Thoughts video, I talk about Zola turning, without spoiling Captain America 2, something in that would seem to contradict that, and I didn't realize at the time, you know, that they were going to do that. I'll admit I was very surprised to see that, but I think you could argue that Zola's problem with Red Skull, you know, when you watch Captain America 2, was a problem with his direct approach, hence the subtle approach he goes for later, and part of it is also apprehension and awe at the sight of something so powerful, you know. But yeah, there definitely is a, he, you know, that he is not complete, you know, when you see Red Skull like call for, you know, it's not quite like Hans in Alolo, you know, where the others will say Heil Hitler and he'll be blah. You know, it's the did I make that reference in the old video? Anyway, it's been a few weeks since I rewatched the videos. Months? Anyway. Yeah, the you know, when he says, you know, Hail Hydra, the loyal Hydra immediately go with it, and Zola, there's this slight hesitation before, yeah. Now, I like Peggy punching the, you know, I think it's called Hodge, you know, yeah, the jerk soldier. I do think it would have been funnier if she had a verbal response to his taunt, like Starship Troopers, you know, with the enemy cannot push a button if we disable his hand. The song, The Star-Spangled Man with a Plan, is really well written, and like everything else in this movie, really fits with what stuff was like back then. You know, you do have the retro-futuristic stuff, but that is, you know, what the future was envisioned to look like back then, you know. And again, yeah, an adventure movie more than an action movie, and as a whole it feels like a serial. But yeah, if you haven't, you know, either the next time you watch this movie, or I think it's probably on YouTube, the entire song, you know, yeah, pay close attention to the lyrics. They really, they reflect what that kind of thing would be written like as back then, and they, you know, they get your spirit, you know. I mean, you listen to it and it's like, okay, yes, that war was, you know, over half a century ago, but man, I really want, yeah, let's go kick German, you know, kick Nazi ass, you know. But yeah, just my absolute favorite part is, who'll put a noose on the goose-stepping goons from Berlin, and with Berlin rhyming with win, you know, it's something like, there's a war we must all win, and just noose on the goose-stepping goons from, just, yeah, really, really nicely done. When it comes to serials, like a lot of other people, I haven't watched very many at all, but I do know that this was inspired by them, and so was the original Star Wars trilogy. And really, if you take the original Star Wars trilogy, set entirely on Earth during World War II, with the only thing not from Earth being the cube, this movie is basically what you end up with. You know, there are a lot of similarities. It makes sense for Cap to have a handgun, and, you know, he doesn't in the other movies, and in the MCU, and really, when we think of Captain America, we don't think of him having a sidearm, though I think in some of the comics he does, but, you know, the idea is he can do that, you know. But still, he's fighting a world war, you know, and he doesn't have one in the other MCU movies, but in those, his allies have superpowers, you know, so it's like, okay, I don't really, I think there's a line in the riff tracks of the Avengers, you know, when Scarlet Witch is like reloading, you know, her guns, you know, as the invasion is going on, you know, and they're like, this is a job for tiny pistols, and it is, yeah, and meanwhile, Black Widow, she does not have super speed, super strength, and a vibranium shield, so it does make sense. She's got the Widow's bite, but she doesn't have. I'm really looking forward to seeing the Wasp's sting as well in Ant-Man and the Wasp. And, it would be nice if the Wasp was in Infinity War. Would have been nice if she had been in the first Ant-Man, but, with how many, characters there are in Infinity War, I guess saying why didn't you also put this one in there is, asking much. But and the first Ant-Man movie also came, I think it was the very next in the line, and the MCU right after an Avengers movie. So it's, yeah, that is the structure that they're taking, But that movie does also look amazing. Looks like it's going to be a ton of fun. And yeah, that covers it for these notes. So yeah, I've already talked about how excited I am for Infinity War. Yeah, I'm really loving rewatching these movies. The MCU, again, not every single movie is, some of them are not quite as good as the others, but they really did have a lot of stuff, nailed down just exactly right from the start. And that's, yeah, incredible. And yeah, so I hope you enjoyed watching as I've enjoyed recording.